Two deadly attacks in 1 week have rocked Canada. The Prime Minister has promised to impose tougher anti-terror laws as a result. But what exactly are these laws and what will they mean for Muslims? Hello, I'm Arnold Naidu and this is The Heat. Police have released a video made by the gunmen who stormed Canada's parliament and shot dead a soldier last week. There's pressure on Parliament to do more to prevent such attacks. The Canadian Prime Minister, Stephen Harper, has vowed to strengthen anti-terror laws.
We will be vigilant, but we will not run scared. We will be prudent, but we will not panic. In recent weeks, I have been saying that our laws and police powers need to be strengthened in the area of surveillance, detention, and arrest. They need to be much strengthened, and I assure you, Mr. Speaker, that work, which is already underway, will be expedited.
To get the latest, we go now to our reporter in Toronto, Canada, Christian Yeo. And Christian, what more do we know about the shooter and the shooting?
Well, yes, that video you referenced there, Anand, reveals really the thinking of Michael Zehaf-Bibeau, or gives us a slight insight. He references Allah quite a few times and also talks about Canada's foreign policy. So this was very much an attack aimed at Canada's political persuasions at the time. Police also say that they don't believe that Zehaf-Bibeau had planned this attack, did little or no planning. He wasn't wearing any body armor of any sort. And they also say that it was completely unrelated to the attack 2 days prior in Quebec, in which two soldiers were attacked in a hit and run in which one soldier died.
Christian, the Canadian Prime Minister, Stephen Harper, is using this act of criminality to push through anti-terror legislation. What is the status of those efforts right now?
Yes, well, this bill was in fact being drafted up before these attacks at the time when it was considered Canada was at risk to such attacks. Bill C-44 aims to strengthen the anti-terror measures that the security services here have. The Canadian Intelligence Service, CSIS, would get more surveillance powers. It would also be allowed to operate more off Canada's home soil and operate overseas with the United States, with Britain, with Australia. The Five Eyes, those group of Anglophone countries that work together with this spy network. And it would also give more protection to informants as well, which is very important if the Canadian Intelligence Service is to really permeate the enemy in this sense. They need to protect those sources that help them find the right people.
Christian, on the evidence so far and what you're hearing from police, was this a one-man operation or a lone wolf operation, as we sometimes hear, or was there a group behind it, or perhaps many groups behind it?
Well, as you know, at the time it was reported there may have been 3 gunmen on the loose in Ottawa, and that by the next day that story had been revised. Michael Zehaf-Bibeau seemed to have been a lone gunman, not related to Monday's attack, and worked on his own initiative, although they're not entirely sure that Zehaf-Bibeau had not been groomed or given any sort of preparation of any sort. So there are still investigations with regards to if he had any accomplices, whether remote or physically in Canada, but it seems certainly the acts carried out last week were done on his own.
Right, Christian, as you point out, you know, the Prime Minister wants to push through anti-terror legislation, which will enable the security services to monitor people, to look up their records, I guess, to listen on their telephone calls, read their emails, etc. How are Canadians responding to that? Are they prepared for that? Are they prepared to accept that?
Canadians are very hesitant in allowing these events to impact on their ways of life. They've seen what's occurred in the United States, in Britain and other countries which have responded to terror attacks. And in fact, they've been very careful not to call these terror attacks until they know the full facts of the issues at large. And the police and the government seem to be taking a more hardline tack on this. Even opposition leaders in Parliament, although are expressing hesitation and are saying that there needs to be a measured approach to this in forming legislation that will last decades. There seems to be a push forward in Parliament on this. The public, however, it doesn't appear to be that much in support of these measures if they impact on day-to-day life here in Canada. It's something that's a new concept to Canadians. They're used to seeing such attacks occur elsewhere. The idea that it's now on home soil, I think, is taking a little time to sink in. Some might say that the Canadian public is in denial that there has been a terrorist attack on home soil.
Christian, it was relatively easy for this gunman to get up on Parliament Hill and to stage this attack. I mean, sometimes we say, democratic societies are open societies, so that's not such a bad thing. But was there a security lapse here, and has those loopholes now been closed?
Well, they certainly were closed by the time we returned to Parliament, once the blockades had been lifted. But, security has never really been that much of an issue on Parliament Hill. Whenever I've been to the centre block, security has been very visible. And in fact, you feel almost intimidated by the presence of the police around that building. What occurred on that morning, I can't say for sure whether, there was a gap in that convoy of cars that circulate that building. Maybe Michael Zehaf-Bibeau got lucky that day. Certainly it's been tightened since then. When we went back to film outside the building, there were guards, there were policemen guarding every entry point to that building. You used to be able to walk through Parliament right up to the doors and inside. You're not even getting past the gates now. Very similar to what we see at the White House, where there's a very visible presence at the gates. Whether or not we'll ever see a time when the public are allowed to walk up those steps and into Parliament remains to be seen.
Thanks, Christian. CCTV's Christian Yeo there from Toronto.